in terms of supporting our ministry. It is written by the Reverend Anna Tulou, who is a Unitarian Universalist minister. So these aren't my words, these are her words, but they're good words. Love and apocalypse. They can't steal my joy. That's the mantra I've been repeating since a gathering of religious professionals a year ago, in which Reverend Viola Abbott declared it in good and glad defiance. They can't steal my joy. Her words rang in my brain and in my bones, and that carried me through last January, through most of the first 2 weeks of the current administration. A couple weeks later, in the early part of February, I took my older boys to see one of those big touring Broadway musicals. It was a great show. The kids had a blast, as you can imagine. I love theater, and I too admired the talented singers and dancers, the production, the story, but I found myself holding back from the poignancy and exuberance, which is not normal for me. Then the drive home, my hands on the steering wheel, the world seemed to dim, and the weight of those first 2 weeks, the heaviness of them came down on me all at once. The fear and anger and despair and violence of them, so many. Do you remember the frantic pace of that first month, the first 100 days, the whole past year for that matter? My spirit felt like a butterfly pinned to a board. And I realized with horror, they stole my joy. They stole my joy. I took a breath and clutched the steering wheel. Once the initial the moment of shock passed, I began questioning my own claim, holding it up against my core beliefs. Is that true? Did they steal my joy? And an answer came. No one can steal my joy. No one gave me joy. Joy is an expression of love, and love cannot be forced nor taken. I had lost my sense of connection to it. I had been overwhelmed by a flood of political actions designed to overwhelm, and I had lost my mooring. But no one had taken it. No one can take it. Joy is ours to choose, to nourish, and protect. There are times when joy comes easy, and there are times when protecting our connection to it is an act of fierce defiance. A second perspective shift followed, so hold that steering wheel moment in your mind. We'll come back to that. But first, I want to name something. Everything I just said, my belief about the nature of joy and love, the process of questioning and challenging myself, this is theology. And theology has never been more important than it is today. In this moment, stay with me, friends. Theology is a loaded word, and I often heard folks say that UU has no theology. Today is the day that I'm calling that baloney. We often don't use the word theology because it sounds too theistic for many of us who are non-theists. Yes, taken literally, theology means talking about God, but our faith tradition doesn't center on deity. Instead, we center on love. So what if theology for us is not talking about God, but about that which we worship, about that which is held at the center, love? What if theology is not simply talk, but theology is a practice of infinite play, where we explore, challenge, and most importantly, live relationally through our actions? Unitarian Universalists don't just have theology. We are challenged to live our theology, that our theology is not for the faint of heart. Now, I've heard a criticism of love at the center, that love is too nebulous, too hard to define, too intangible, and open to interpretation at the core of our tradition. So let's do some theological reflection about love. I want you to listen to these questions and statements and really turn them over for yourself. Notice where you experience resistance, where you experience confusion or curiosity, and where you experience resonance or relief. What is love? What does that word mean to you? Is it just roses and candy and romantic stuff? Is it sentimentality or warm, fuzzy feelings? Is it thoughts and prayers, a practice of gratitude? Is it service and co-liberation? Bell Hooks taught that love is critical for any social justice movement and agreed with M. Scott Peck's definition of love as the will to extend oneself for the purpose of nurturing one's own or another's spiritual growth. Is love, as Valerie Kaur put it, a form of sweet labor, fierce, bloody, imperfect, and life-giving? Is love a noun? Is love a verb? An action? How is a love-centering theology transformed, depending on one's understanding of what love is? I told you earlier that theology has never been more important than it is today. I mean that, and not just because of the violence and harm being perpetrated and shaped by oppressive theologies. I mean it because if you want to change the world, if you want to actively participate in the healing of what is torn and broken in America today, you must take your own theology seriously. Ruby Sales, that wise leader in the civil rights movement, talked about the prayers, songs, the religious community itself, and its traditions. These expressions of theology as the armor that her generation wore when they went out to fight for justice. The theology and the community that lived that theology together helped to keep them whole. But the next generation to take up that fight for justice, many had distanced themselves from religion, and Sales worried for them. We sent our children out into the empire without their armor on. Do you understand what I'm saying? Theology and the community that lives and plays theologically together is the armor that keep our spirits whole. If you hearken back to our call to worship, the words of Sean Parker Dennison, this is the armor that can help us not just to survive, but thrive, even and especially when our beloveds, our families, our neighbors, ourselves are being threatened or attacked, even when it feels like apocalypse. Even when it feels like apocalypse. Because here's the thing that I bet Valerie Kaur knows, that Sean Parker Dennison knows, and that I want you to know. Apocalypse does not mean the end of the world. That's a more recent simplification of its meaning. Apocalypse means revelation. Apocalypse means that things that were hidden are now uncovered. That revelation can be frightening and painful, but the thing that has been revealed is not new. It was there all along, yes. Some of us were more aware of it than others, but now it's no longer hidden. It's out there in the open. What means now we can examine, now we can plan, now we can put on our armor for the work ahead, questioning through our every impulse and action. What does it mean to hold love at the center? Only then can we engage with wisdom in the deep work of healing, to which I do believe we are called, to bring love from a nebulous and tangible concept to a very tangible presence in the world. Unitarian Universalist theology A lived theology that centers revolutionary love is not for the faint of heart. It dares not to respond to hate with hate, but to dig deep into wonder, to remember that the inherent worth of every being, even and especially when it's not easy, when we disagree, when we are angry or afraid. Harder still, it dares us to love the opponent, even as we struggle and organize against policies and transgressions, to say, "You are a part of me I do not yet know." It dares us to honor our anger by not letting our anger turn to hate, to poison, to honor it. For that anger is born from a desire to protect that which we love. It dares us to create and protect space from our connection and expression of joy, just as we create and protect space for our expressions of lament, because both the lament and joy are essential expressions of love. And it dares us to be willing to risk our safety, security, and comfort, because, as my dear friend, Reverend Samara Powers says, "You are only as safe as the people you are willing to protect." I propose that to live our theology in this way means sometimes risking everything except our spirits. That is what our armor, our theology, protects. All right, let's return to that steering wheel moment, that car ride where I found myself saying, "They stole my joy." My first theological challenge and correction of myself was that no one can steal my joy. Joy cannot be stolen, nor can it be forced. My connection to joy is not dependent on any other person nor their actions. But I didn't stop there. I kept going, and I found a second, more challenging theological connection. Even using the word they stole my joy, drew a line between myself and them. That line of separation was born of my own distress, fear, grief, anger, all of which were born from love. Yet that line meant I stopped seeing them as connected, as part of me, inhibiting love. And that, too, is part of the challenge of this theology. Even as I resist the harm, the injustice, so too must I resist the impulse towards othering. My resistance comes from love. I do not want my resistance to become an impediment to love. This theology is how I keep my spirit whole, how I resist sinking into despair or hate. In the beloved community, there is no them. There are no walls or circles dividing us. That is revolutionary love. Unitarian Universalism is a non-creedal religion, and so, as a UU minister, I'm not going to tell you what to believe or what to do. Each of you must wrestle with that, with what you believe, and how willing you are to live out those beliefs, and in what ways. We are not all called to believe the same thing, nor to make the same choices. Also, I'm never going to tell you that everything is going to be okay. But I will tell you this: we will get through this apocalypse, this revelation, and any other apocalypse that comes along. We will get through it together. And if we put on our armor and ground in our beliefs, individually and in community, if we challenge ourselves to an integrity, an alignment of belief and action grounded in love, then we will get through this with our spirits intact. I close with apocalyptic words from Adrienne Marie Brown. Things are not getting worse, they are getting uncovered. We must hold each other tight and continue to pull back the veil. Let's do this. Amen. Asi, blessed be.
Our closing